Why, hello there, true crimerers. Guess what? It's time for another true crime in a short amount of time, and also another coldest cases by Canadian province, if you couldn't tell by my near-perfect accent. Today, we are going to Quebec. Quebec has a ton of cold cases, so I've added them all to my list. I will cover them all eventually, but this is the oldest one that I could find that had, information to tell. And it is the case of Teresa Martin. Viewer discretion is advised. September 13th, 1969 was a very, very cold night. It was relatively late that night in Montreal, Quebec, when a man named Pierre Sierre, he began to walk back towards his apartment. He had been out, and so he was just coming home for the night. It was about 3:30 in the morning, so it was late, or early, depending on how you look at it. As he approached his building, he saw what appeared to be a young girl sitting against the wall, and she had no shoes on. She didn't appear to be moving or making any sounds. He kind of looked and said, "Hey, are you okay?" He got no response, so he hurried up the stairs to his apartment, picked up the phone, and called emergency services. They came out, and they would take this young girl to the nearest hospital, but it was already too late. This young girl was dead. Earlier that day, 14-year-old Teresa Martin had gone to a movie, and they went to the Galeries d'Anjou, and the movie got out sometime around 11 p.m. The friends, after the movie, basically split apart, and they all saw Teresa get onto the 41 bus at a little after 11 p.m. And then from there, they didn't see her again. Later on, the bus driver would tell police that he dropped her off at Gouin and Rollins Boulevard. And this stop was literally just like a block or two down from where Teresa lived, and she was just going to walk the rest of the way. Fast forward now back to 3:30 in the morning when the gentleman found the teenage girl. She was brought to the hospital and then pronounced dead. They did not know who she was, and they found out that just a few hours prior, Teresa Martin's father had reported his daughter missing. And so basically the two stories ended up kind of coming together when they realized that the young girl who was basically found dead by this apartment building was 14-year-old Teresa Martin. This absolutely shattered Teresa's family. Her parents and her sister had just moved into a new apartment. Everything was going so great. It was a wonderful family, very loving. Teresa was adored by everybody. And so this happening was just like a shock. And it just sent a shockwave through not only her family, but her, friends group. She had a lot of friends. She was kind of more borderline an introvert from what it sounds like. She was shy, kind of bashful, but also loved sort of being with her friends. She certainly was not a young girl who got involved with anything like drinking or drugs. She didn't run with the wrong crowd. She was a very good student who never got into any kind of trouble. And so this was just like, how did this happen? And what happened? Well, the coroner did the autopsy that her cause of death was asphyxiation because she had an object stuck basically halfway down her throat. And so she choked to death. This could be sort of perceived at first as this may have been an accident. I don't know what the object was, however, but the reason why they know that this was something more, evil, this was more possibly a murder, was that someone had cut a word onto her stomach. It was a fresh cut. It literally had just happened shortly before she was found. And what the carving on her stomach said, F.V. Frenchie, I love you. Police had absolutely no idea what that meant. Her friends, her family, no clue. It was just such a bizarre thing. They were thinking, like, is this some beginnings of a serial killer and this is going to be like his signature? Or is it just a random thing that this killer did in order to throw police off their track? Who knows? Back then, this entire area, like, you had the apartment complex, I guess, and what it sounds like is there was a giant, just sort of open space, like just a lot of field between the apartment building where she was found, where, by the way, she didn't really know anyone there, and then her apartment building. So, and it was like pitch dark. So if she got off the bus around that area and she was going to walk back towards her apartment, she would be walking through a completely dark area. About a year or so later, because they got really no tips and no information from anyone, a girl would come forward to say that she believes Teresa was probably killed by a local biker gang. Apparently, during this time in the late 60s, throughout the early 70s, I guess Montreal had some competing biker gangs, and they were, like, I guess, against each other, fighting each other, at war, if you will. And then this would basically kind of move towards just the regular people. Like, these bikers would threaten regular people who weren't involved in any of this. There would be violence. And so this girl who said, well, she thinks bikers did it, even though it was all going on, it still seemed like a very random thing for, like, a biker gang to murder randomly this teenage girl. This girl claims that her and Teresa and some other young girls were kind of hanging out with members of MUQ, but it doesn't look like or sound like anything came from that because, again, Teresa was this super shy, very kind of reserved girl who certainly would never just, like, willingly hang out with a bunch of, like, rugged, tough, sometimes scary bikers. Her family, and especially her sister, believes that this whole biker thing was just, like, a complete distraction. That it was just, that had nothing to do with Teresa. But this case, just simply put, went cold. And it's been ice cold since 1969, 1970. They have nothing. You know, I think the family wants them to take the clothing that Teresa was wearing that night that she was found in and test it for possible DNA. I mean, we have the technology to do that nowadays. I don't know if they have or not. Quebec, apparently, what it looks like is that they don't really resolve a lot of cold cases. Like I said, there is a ton. And I was reading somewhere that says, like, since 2001, 2002 or so, that Quebec has only solved like 11 of those unsolved cases, and that's up until like the past year or two. And there are a lot. Someone murdered Teresa Martin. Someone forced an object down her throat that caused her to slowly asphyxiate in probably a very terrifying and painful way. And it's a slow way to die. And then they carved something into her stomach. This person got away with it. I mean, this is 1969. This is over 50 years ago. So if it was like a teenager who did it, you know, we're talking that this person will be in their maybe in their mid-60s. If an adult did it, it could be any age, could be anywhere 70s, 80s, or dead, more than likely. So it's very reasonable to think that this person got away with it. But they can still solve these things. So that's why, you know, they need your help. If you or anyone out there has any information on this case, her family would absolutely love anything you can provide. Anything. Smallest detail may seem totally insignificant to you, but to the investigators, to her family, it could break everything completely wide open. You can always report these things anonymously. If you have any information about the murder of 14-year-old Teresa Martin from Montreal, Quebec, you can contact the Quebec Provincial Police Department. And again, you can report these things anonymously. And you can help bring closure and some sort of end to this family's 50-plus year nightmare. Somewhere, someone out there knows the truth. Perhaps that someone is you. But that is it for today's case. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, stumbled your way into this video by accident, be more careful, all right? Don't hurt yourself. But also stick around. Give me a subscribe if you like true crime. I tell 4 true crime stories here a week on YouTube. I also tell one on
Insta,
one on Facebook, and a few... I don't know why I'm doing this. And a few over on the Tickle My Talk. Gross. And all of my socials are in the description below and also in the link tree below for easy clickage. So yeah, follow me wherever you want to if you want to. But that's it. That's it. That's it for this video. True crime and Rudy Doody Ding Dongs. And so, like I close every video, of course, very consistently, I'm going to try to eat one of my dog's treats. And now I'm just going to see what they're eating because, you know, they're my babies. You gotta know what they're eating. So, oh, it's tough. Okay, here we go. I don't know what it is. Maybe second time's the charm. Maybe second time. I don't.